You enter the IELTS speaking test, sit in front of the examiner, but then what exactly happens? How many questions will they ask you? What type of questions will they ask? How long does the test take? Are you allowed to take notes? Can you see the questions? I will be answering all of your questions in this video. Hello everyone, welcome to this video. In this video, I'll be telling you everything you need to know about IELTS speaking tests. And this is also the first video of my IELTS speaking preparation series. And in the next videos, we'll be talking about different topics that you need to prepare for. I will be giving you sample answers and we will try to learn some useful vocabulary, expressions and structures that you need to know in order to succeed in the test. So stay with me till the end of this video and drop a comment below if you like it. So let's get started. IELTS speaking tests, and we're going to talk about everything you need to know while you're taking your test. So the thing is that the test will take around 11 to 14 minutes, but let's say potentially it could also be longer, up to 20 minutes based on how the test is going. It has 3 different parts that we're going to talk about, and you will be continuously assessed throughout the test. This is an interview between you and an IELTS examiner, so you will be the only candidate in the room with only one examiner. And your interview is recorded and it will be conducted by someone who is certified to take the test. And the examiner listens for 4 things throughout the test. So if you want to be scored highly in the text, there are 4 areas to be aware of. The first thing is fluency and coherence. In order to be scored highly in this area, you need to keep speaking and organize ideas clearly. It's important not to have a lot of hesitations. It's important to speak continuously, and it's important that your ideas make sense and are logically, let's say, ordered. The next thing is grammar. You need to show a good range with reasonable control. So the thing is that it's really important that you use correct grammar, but correct grammar alone is not enough. You also need to be able to use a range of, let's say, complex structures, advanced grammatical points and things like that in order to be scored highly, especially for people who want to have a band score higher than 7. The next thing is lexical resource. Use vocabulary accurately and paraphrase. So it's important to be able to use vocabulary accurately, be aware of collocations, idioms, expressions, be aware of topic-related vocabulary because we have like general vocabulary. A lot of us are very good at that, but there's also like a type of vocabulary that is topic-related. For example, if you're talking about sports, you need to be able to use a range of collocations that are related to the specific topic of sports. And be able to paraphrase. Paraphrasing basically means that you are able to say the same thing with different wording and different structure. So this is very important when you're trying to answer the questions. It's important not to copy the same structure of the question, like, what's your favorite color? My favorite color is... It's the same thing, so you're not showing anything from your own knowledge. So what I suggest is that you change the wording. For example, what's your favorite color? Well, that's a good question. I would say that the color that I like the most is green, for example. The last thing is pronunciation. The important thing is to be understandable without too much effort. So as long as you pronounce words correctly, it does not matter if you have an accent or anything else. It doesn't matter if you speak American English, British English, or if you have, let's say, an accent that is influenced by your mother tongue. It's perfectly fine. No worries about that. The only important thing is to pronounce things in the right way. So let's start with part 1. The function of part 1 basically is introduction and interview. They will ask you familiar questions about you and your life. So it's personal, it's about everyday situations, and it takes around 4 to 5 minutes. They will ask you about 3 different topics. The first topic basically is, let's say, 80% of the times about where you live. So it would be basically about your hometown, your apartment, your accommodation, maybe your neighborhood, or what you do. So the first question would be like, do you work or are you a student? And based on the answer you give to that question, they would ask you questions about education, studies, or about working. And then you have like two other additional frames that could be about any other topic. And over here, prepare for these opening areas because these are like the most important things. They usually ask you about these topics, like work or studies is the most common one, then home and accommodation, as I told you, and then hometown or your city. So you need to learn like a lot of vocabulary about these topics because these are super high frequency, and chances are that you're also going to be asked about this topic. Also, for example, your current daily life and things you generally do. So part one then moves through other familiar topics. Here are some other topics that you need to prepare for. For example, free time. What do you usually do in your free time? And for example, how do you spend your weekend? Do you think you have enough free time? Things like that. About the weather. What's your favorite type of weather, for example? What type of weather you cannot stand? Then we have like technology. Do you use technology every day? Which one of your devices do you like the most? Do you use the most? Do you use social media? And then you have got the topic of music. What type of music do you like the best? Do you have, let's say, a favorite singer, whatever? We have the topics of friends, food, transport, weekends. These are the things that are most common, but also a lot of other topics as well. The important thing is that the topics are personal, so you answer with your own experience, with the things that you do every day, and that's all. A strong part one answer is developed, but it is still conversational. If you're looking for like a number of sentences that you should use in your answers, or let's say a timing, I would say between 15 seconds to 20 seconds and around 4 sentences. For example, if they ask you, do you enjoy music? And you say yes, it's a very short answer. Be careful that this is a very nice, let's say, formula to have in mind. Answer, reason, detail. So you're like, yes, definitely. I listen to music almost every day because it helps me relax after work. I'm particularly interested in alternative rock. So you see, first I answer the question, then I provide a reason for this, and then I go on saying more details about my answer. This is a perfect length for part one questions. Moving on to the second part. The second part is basically called your individual long turn. So in this part, the examiner will not interrupt when you are speaking. You will be asked to talk about one topic. You have 1 minute to prepare and then 2 minutes to talk about it. They will give you a task card. You will take notes and then you will have 2 minutes to speak. So it says 1 to 2 minutes, but what I suggest is that you start speaking and you continue speaking until the examiner says thank you. Do not stop earlier than that. And giving you more details about it. So this part is the only part where you're allowed to take a look at your questions, because for the rest of the exam you're not allowed to take any notes, you're not allowed to look at the questions. In this part they will give you a cue card which will give you a route. They don't want you to give 4 separate answers to the questions, but they will try to guide you through your answer. But do not worry about like answering all of the prompts that they give you. Just take a look at them. Let's say they will give you some ideas and then just try to talk about the topic. It does not matter if you do not cover all the prompts that they have given you. Those are just there to help you develop ideas. For example, describe a skill that you would like to learn. And here are some prompts. So what the skill is, why you would want to learn it, and how it could help you. And these are some cue cards. You start talking about it. And part 2 basically tests the fact that whether you are able to speak at length. Is it possible for you to, for example, talk for 2 minutes without hesitations, without great difficulty? They would like to see if you can organize your ideas logically, and also they would like to see if you're able to use appropriate language while talking about it. Use the preparation minute to create anchors. So 1 minute is a very short time to prepare. So do not spend your time writing sentences, but grammar. It's impossible to write grammar. Basically, just write individual words that would help you organize your ideas. And then when you look at your notes when you're speaking, they would give you ideas to continue. For example, write keywords basically. If the topic is photography, travel, online courses, creative work, just the what would be like name the skill, write it down, and then why you do it, make it a little bit personal, explain the plan, and then what results it has in your life. For example, is it something that helps with your physical health, mental health, things like that. And after you know your road plan, and if you see that you still have more time, come back to it, write some, let's say, collocations that you think might be helpful in your speaking, so that when you look at them, you will just remember to use them when you're speaking. So moving on to the third part. The third part is basically a discussion, but that does not mean that the examiner is going to give you his ideas or his or her ideas, or he's going to talk to you about the arguments that you make. It is just basically they might ask you follow-up questions. They would say, okay, I agree, that's a nice point, things like that. They will not do this in the first part. So basically in the first part, they would just ask you the next question when the time is up. They're not allowed to even say thank you. So when I say discussion, the idea of having a discussion is that they would agree with you, they would ask you follow-up questions, they would thank you when you give them answers, that's all. So in this part, you move from personal experience to wider issues. So in parts 1 and 2, you were just talking about your personal experiences and things like that. Now you're going to talk about more abstract general topics, but it does not mean that you're not allowed to give your own opinion, because if you don't give your own opinion, what else are you going to do? It just means that you're not drawing on your own experiences. I will show you more questions and I will tell you more about this. You have to be analytical for this part. It will take around 4 to 5 minutes. And one very important thing is that the topic of part 3 is always related to the topic of part 2. So it's not something separated. Part 3 demands a different kind of answer. So part 1 is basically personal. They would ask you whether you enjoy, for example, learning online. What you do is that you use your own experience, you keep it natural and relevant, and that's all. Part 3 is general. For example, how has online learning changed education? If you start answering with, yes, I very much like learning online, you will lose a lot of points in part 3, because first you have to explain, then you need to do comparisons, justify your answers, and add examples. So your answers need to have more depth, and they should be generally longer than part 1. If you use like 15 to 20 seconds to answer part 1 questions, for part 3 it's around 35 to 40 seconds, and you would use roughly 8 sentences to respond. So something that is really important in part 3 is that if you miss a question and you don't understand it, just stay calm and repair the conversation. In this part, you can ask the examiner to repeat it for you. So could you repeat the question, please, if you didn't hear it? You can check information like, do you mean blah, blah, blah? Or you can give yourself time to think. So basically, that's an interesting question, I've never thought about this, and then you give yourself a little bit of time to organize your ideas, and then you return to the exact question and start answering it. Be careful that in part 3 it's normal. If you don't know the meaning of a word, you can just ask your examiner, what does this word mean, and they would give you a synonym for it, basically. This is something that will not happen in part 1. It doesn't matter how many times you ask them, they will just repeat the question and that's it. Remember the test as one movement. So it's basically a movement from you to your story and the wider issue. So part one is about you, your life, familiar experiences and everything. Part two is actually your long term. You talk about one organized story or you describe something, and part three is basically the wider issue. You provide analysis, comparisons, and opinions. And so based on what we just covered, you should tell me which part do you think feels the easiest for you, which part feels the most difficult, and things like that. Be careful that it's really important to keep calm when you're taking the test. And in the upcoming videos, we'll be talking about, let's say, different types of questions. We will work on samples, and we will have like, let's say, sample tests basically, plus feedback and everything. So stay tuned for the next videos. And for now, that's all I have to say. So I hope you enjoyed this video and have a lovely day.